Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon session, Story of an Event. Today's edition of Story of an Event Industry Leader. Rita Chandarana, sorry, I've just pronounced her name wrong. Sorry, Rita. Rita Chandarana from Eventologists. My brain's starting to get to the end of the day kind of thing. I'm just going to pull up Rita's presentation. Due to some connectivity issues that Rita's been experiencing the past couple of days, we have got a pre-recorded session, but Rita is here to answer questions at the end. So I'm going to press play in a minute. Rita is Director of Eventologists Limited. They're a creative event production company based in Leicestershire. If anybody has ever been to event industry events, we have so many of them. If you ever see the sparkly trees, you know that eventologists have been to that event and been doing their magical stuff. And I'll let Rita tell you about the recent photograph of the Chancellor in a restaurant, so she can tell you that story. But without further ado, I'm going to start Rita's presentation, and then we'll do some questions at the end.
Quote that really resonates with me is an Indian quote that says, only when you one person, then I feel that this is going to be a massive achievement for me. I would have never gone through half my challenges if I had actually understood, maybe at school or from a manager or even from my parents, that I was responsible for everything that happened to me, and that I create the meaning to my experiences, and I'm the one who can actually change those circumstances by just changing that meaning. Not only am I going to share with you some of my lessons of personal development, I'm also going to talk to you about some of the great tools that have helped me create an organisation of positive culture. And that goes way beyond treating people to dinners out, pool tables. I'm going to show you how I help my staff protect and create better versions of themselves. So I started my career as an assistant product manager for a lovely brand called Rexel, and I worked through various roles in marketing and then ended up as a marketing manager in my last job as strategic marketing manager at Maryhill Shopping Centre. And in industry, most people knew me as really tenacious, resilient, ambitious. But little did I know that this wasn't going to be enough to help me in my onward journey. And I remember in 2004, my mum phoned me at work, and I never forget this. She was sobbing, really, really sobbing, and yet I was really busy on that day. I kind of stopped all of a sudden. I said, "What's wrong?" And she told me that she'd actually hidden something for me for quite some time, and my dad was quite sick with diabetes. Now, he ran a photography business and an events business and created a reputation at that time where some of us would just dream about that kind of reputation, because actually everyone knew him. People just wanted to work with him. He was talked about in media, and even when we went abroad, he'd always meet somebody he knew. That massive success actually came with its own stress, because he couldn't control his diabetes, and he started losing control of the business. So that's where I came in. My siblings were really young, and I had no choice really to leave Birmingham and go back home. So I arrived back to Leicester, and I honestly thought that I could turn everything around really quickly. But I didn't realise how many challenges I would have along the way. So in 2005, if I look at the business, I didn't have an email, I didn't have internet, staff would pick and choose their events, and generally there was a lot of sort of issue with the product, which kind of lacked sort of modern day innovation, but they were still great, but needed some work. Just the sheer amount of work scared me. I just couldn't make a mistake. I suddenly became the marketing team, the finance team, the IT, operations, logistics, for this small organisation that could flourish really quickly, but it needed a lot of hard work. So swamped with all of this work, 7 days a week, every hour that God could send, and doing certain things that were way over my head at times. Everything mattered. And when I looked at everything, I'd read a piece of paper and then it just mattered. Everything mattered to me. And the more it mattered, the more I created voices in my head. And I used to say things like, oh, you haven't got that experience. And what do you know about managing this? And you're way over your head. What will you do now? The voices started getting louder and louder, but I actually just pursued. I was really resilient and I actually stuck to it. And slowly but surely, I started designing amazing products. I was delivering impeccable customer service, networking like crazy, and put real tight processes in place so that everything started working. Finally, my big break came when people started to recognize me all of a sudden. And in 2008, one of the biggest caterers started to say, well, actually, we want to work with you, and started to recommend me. Almost overnight, our sales trebled and we became one of the most successful creative brands in the country. But this actually came with problems of their own, because we were really used to doing 3 or 4 events. And what we ended up having is enormous. We had 15, 16 events on a weekend. We didn't have experience to run 15, 16 events. And suddenly I had to set up a whole new range of new processes, whilst I tempered the newfound success. But all of this was as a result of a personal sacrifice. And that didn't really make me feel good, and nor was it very good for my self-esteem. The voices in my head had started getting louder and louder, and I found myself really stuck. So in 2010, I finally had the business in control. So I started to look at my future career. And I was doing that whilst I was running my parents' business hand in hand. But I was absolutely exhausted. I had no energy. I was tired. But I knew I didn't have a choice but to progress. Myself and my husband absolutely loved corporate events, and Sit was working in an exhibition company at the time. So it totally made sense that we leveraged the experience of my parents' business to create a little events company, and we named it Eventologists. We thought it was, a lovely title, but it wasn't as easy as that, because the time that I'd spent working really hard had completely pooped me. The vacant headspace that I had from giving up elements of my parents' business had suddenly been taken up by the voices that gradually got louder and louder, because I just hadn't given myself a break. All sorts of things I'd say to myself, who do you think you are? I can never do that. Those contracts always go to bigger companies. What do you know about corporate? You've been out of it for so long. And no one knew those voices in my head actually existed apart from me. And they were starting to make me really bad. Except the one thing I did have is resilience. So slowly I started opening doors for me. It was steady, but slow was the operative word. But soon enough, I met a business mentor who worked for the Chamber of Commerce. And every time he'd meet me, he'd say to me, have you read a book called The Secret? You really remind me of someone who's read The Secret. And I didn't quite understand why. But he kept on saying this to me week after week after week. So eventually I've, gave in and bought the book. And all of a sudden, I was absolutely hooked. I read it over and over again until that book became my Bible. And reading the book made me realize that me repeating these negative voices that were in my head, which were the actual reasons things were happening to me. And my reality was actually based on these repeated patterns. And I didn't realize that my present state was actually holding me back so much. In fact, I recently heard something that kind of relates totally to that situation. And it said something like ships being safe in the harbour, but that's not what ships are built for. And I realised I was doing exactly the same thing, because all I was doing was making safe decisions, taking safe events, safe customers, and I wasn't maximising my true potential. So off I went, looking at different lessons that would teach me, and I came across a quote by someone called Joe Dispenser, which I totally feel that he was talking to me. And he basically just said, if you want to change your life, you need to create a new personal you. And you need to change your personality, which means you need to change what you've been thinking, because what you believe and the root of the problem goes to what you believe. So in order to change my thoughts of the past, I was going to have to change the thoughts, the beliefs, and therefore the current me. Following that, I came across another great lady, and I started to really identify what was making me feel really bad. And she was a lady called Marissa Peer. She's a hypnotherapist who practices RTT, but 5 points really resonated with me, because she actually said that your beliefs override everything. Your beliefs either empower you or disempower you. And the 5 points were quite simple, but truly effective. So the first one was your mind cannot hold conflicting beliefs. So it doesn't like things like, oh, I'd really love to own my business, but I'm scared of losing money, or I want to lose lots of weight, but I really love cake. You need to tell your mind what you want, and really clearly. And I couldn't be clearer after I understood that point. The second one was choose beliefs and thoughts that serve your objectives. And that simply meant that you had to be really clear how to align your beliefs and your objectives. So things like, I'm so lucky to be in my job right now, instead of, oh, I don't know whether I'm going to have a job tomorrow. It's basically conditioning your mind to think positively about what you want. The third one is probably my most favourite: make the unfamiliar familiar. And what that meant was, if you don't like to do something, or you put it as your very last thing to do, and it's not very good for you, you need to get into the habit of stopping that and then get into a better habit. So I'll give you an example of exercise being a really easy one. We kind of put it off often. And if you start doing it long enough, actually all the hormones inside of you start to make something that's totally unfamiliar, something that you don't like, and it makes it familiar and a habit. The next and the fourth point is you make your beliefs, and your beliefs make you. So the dialogue that you have with yourself is a super way of changing beliefs. So instead of saying things like, every time I speak in public, say, I stammer and stutter, you can turn around and say, well, I'm actually really getting used to this public speaking, and I'm getting better at it every day. And that sends great messages to your brain. finally, she says, every thought has an emotional and physical reaction. So what she basically meant by that is watching your words. And I think it's especially true in the events industry, because when you use words like, it's really bonkers today, it's really stressful, I'm really busy, I don't have time, it actually puts great weight on us. And you can choose between good language and bad language, or light language or heavy language. But what you can't choose is the outcome after you've used those negative words. Great thoughts give you great things. So stick to that, and then suddenly you won't find yourself using those words over and over again. You'll just tend to use positive words. And if you like all of these concepts, one of the exercises that I often go through when I find myself in a real negative space is I grab a piece of paper or a book, and I start to write down what makes me angry, what makes me sad, what stresses me, who's making me feel awful, where the bad feelings that I think might be coming from. And writing it down is a little bit like journaling. So it gets it out of your head, and then you start to see patterns and clusters of thinking. And not only will it help you to understand what you're saying to yourself, but also maybe patterns to say, that makes me do this. Now, once you've done that, I suggest that you get another blank sheet and then write down every moment that makes you feel proud and happy and great and positive, and what inspires you. And basically by doing this, what it allows you to do is reframe your brain, because negative emotions are a much stronger thing than positive emotions. So from my point of view, I do it when I'm, for example, really stressed at an event. If I find myself in that I've got 20 minutes to go and that I've got so much to do, I'll almost switch to a memory of a really good event I did. And within no time at all, I'll start motoring again. Gabrielle Bernstein calls it the choose again method. So what she basically says is before the negative stuff becomes a thing, you re-divert your bad energy. And that's exactly what I do all the time when I feel like that. And all these great teachers have actually helped me to reframe my thinking. So I tend to use less negative stuff, and I notice much more that I'm being negative at the moment. Change that. And then at work, it's been helping me because I'm not thinking small, I'm thinking dynamic, ambitious. I'm not thinking about necessarily safety because I've got the inner wisdom to be able to know how to maneuver myself through that. And suddenly customers started to believe me. And when I turned up to events, my experience, my resilience shone out like a beacon, because people would automatically levitate around the most calm person in the room, which was me. Personal development directly correlated to improvements in my business, improvements in turnover, in sales, and generally my workplace. I loved doing what I did, and I found myself enjoying everything much more. I had actually strengthened and come out of this inferiority complex that we found ourselves in originally. Also, by 2011, we'd changed a lot of our personal habits. So from looking 10 years older, I was eating better, drinking better, meditating, exercising, and also reading and listening much, much more, and planting real positive seeds in my brain. And so often events people don't actually look after themselves. And I often hear people say things like, oh, I've only had 2 hours sleep today, or they don't eat properly. And actually that's not great for both your self-respect, but also how it makes us feel when we turn up to events. And sometimes we just, because we're tired, because we're exhausted, because we've not feeding ourselves good thoughts, we don't turn up to events well. We say things that maybe are out of place, or we take a situation totally out of context, or we say something to somebody that doesn't go down well. So actually by looking after our own self, you're also looking after your business. Really, we were in a situation by this time that we'd actually trebled in size and growth, and none of this was slowing. And I have to say that I was just, bowled over, and I kind of went, oh my God, this stuff really works. But one of the things that it also identified is I was on this path. Maybe Sit was on this path, who was working with me. But actually, other people in the organisation sometimes didn't get what all the lessons behind doing the right thing. So I then set off on a way of creating a culture that was actually in line with my own. And what we started doing goes way beyond taking people out for a drink or putting a nice comfy, a comfy cozy sofa in the chill out area or a canteen. We started creating an organizational culture that followed our path, but also helped them to motivate themselves and grow their team. It was very different to my learning and my managers of the past. Some of my managers in the past basically filled me with absolute horror and fear and didn't really get the best out of me. So what I did was look at what I didn't want to do as a manager, and then started to create a structure that I thought would work better for the people who were working for me. Of course, in business, you have to set standards and you have to have, you're constantly raising the bar, but you don't need to do it in a way that employees feel scared or they feel vulnerable. I really wanted to create a culture where people felt that my business was their business also. And for them to personally grow, I had to make sure that it was great from the moment they had their interview with me. So at interviews, instead of having a really formal interview, asking them really direct questions, we'd ask them to talk about themselves, create a mood board, which we talk through, and talk being the operative word, and we just chat through some of the things that they've been through, because we kind of realise that not everyone performs well under a pressure. So where possible, the other thing we do is also invite some of the staff to attend a few events with us. And from there, we start to realise a huge amount about people who work with us. And you end up getting a better fit by having them working with you and learning more about them. We also have a really flat hierarchy, and lots of people kind of say, well, that's really possible because you've got a small organisation. The direct opposite is often the case in a small company, because what tends to happen is the owner manager becomes really passionate about their event, their own management style or their decision, and you tend to micromanage, or you tend to make people only follow your decisions. What we've done instead, and I consciously do this all the time, is say, what do you think? What would you do if you were me? And often that they've got better ideas than me. So we empower staff to make better decisions than us all the time. So saying things like, well, this is what I think, but what would you do in this circumstance? The results have been that we've managed to build loyalty. Self-esteem is a really big thing, because staff feel really heard, and they have a massive sense of pride even when they go to events. They totally treat my company like their company. We've also changed the way we do appraisals. So one of the key things that I learned from working before is I didn't understand why a lot of the time my managers spent ages looking at the 20% that I was bad at. And instead, what we do is focus on the 80% that people are good at and try and make the 80% great, rather than making the 20% of bad things average. So if I find that someone is actually struggling with something, we automatically just re-maneuver and get them to focus on all the good things. And what tends to happen there is we encourage them so much, and they get so confident in doing those 80% of things that they start to feel that they want to start looking at the other development points. And if they don't, and if it's not a big deal, we redeploy them. And this has been really effective for us, especially because we're a small team, because I'd rather have everyone excelling at what they're good at and leveraging the best out of them, rather than getting bogged down by something that is making them struggle and their self-esteem struggle. So we've got a really small team, from being sort of 10, 15 agencies, other people strong. There's actually 6 or 7 of us doing all the things that we're great at, and actually it works fine without anyone feeling overloaded. Also, from management down, one of the powerful lessons I learned was actually refraining from actually using really strong language, so we don't over exaggerate situations. So saying things like, this is really stressful, doesn't really come in my everyday language. We tend to use words like, it's no stress, don't worry about it, everything's resolvable, let's look at that together. We rarely use the really busy's, I can't cope, because from my point of view, I just see it as, if I keep saying that as a manager, my staff are going to say, well, if she can't cope, well, I'm obviously not going to cope, because they look at me as somebody who should be able to cope. Also, we focus on the personal and professional life. So we look at our staff aspirations. We also look at what they want to achieve in their personal life as well. And we do this by listening to them, whether they want to buy a house, whether they're doing something that they want to achieve as a sort of goal. We do this by watching their body language, talking to them, and also just having a quick chat now and then to understand what's going on in their lives, because obviously everyone's got something going on in their lives, and by actually understanding that, we know how to support them. But also at the same time, we're not going to have great employees going off to events when we haven't understood what is going through their lives and through their minds. And by doing this, we've again managed to redeploy the right people in the right places. Our staff feel truly looked after, and they feel that a weight's lifted off their shoulders when we manage to say, well, okay, if this is a problem this week, why don't we look at doing this to help you this week, so that then you can look at it better next week. And we're not they've got greater clarity, and decision making hasn't got brain fog, and we know when to switch on and switch off our support just by talking to them, allowing them to talk, and also watching them as well. So if I was going to give you 5 tips that you can use in your company really quickly, and ones that will deliver quick results, I'd probably choose these 5. So the first one being support people at what they're good at. Especially now, it's more important to support them on getting their good things great. And this increases self-esteem and also produces better business results. If someone is struggling and what they're doing is not totally core to the business, I'd actually suggest redeploying those skills and find someone who can do that element better and faster. Also, I would say that as managers, be really careful about describing the situation using really heavy words. The more heavy words that you use, the more they'll look at you and think, well, if she's feeling stressed, well, I'm also feeling stressed, Stop using words like, it's stressful, I'm very busy today, I'm not coping well today, and try and be careful how you're using and what words you're using. That brings the mood down for absolutely everyone. Also, I'd say that building a culture that people feel really safe, they don't feel judged, they're able to discuss matters, and creating this real safe environment that they don't feel stuck is really important. It helps decision making quickly, so they're not going to hide behind the computer thinking, okay, what do I do now? I'm not quite sure. People have been out of work for a while, and therefore things happen a little bit slower. But also the procrastination sometimes creates voices in your head saying, well, if I don't do this right, I don't feel safe. Will I be out of a job? So it's really important that that doesn't happen. And finally, a big one for me is right now we have to understand people's personal and professional story more than ever. It shows that you care. It shows that their welfare matters to you. But also, watch things like their body language, because lots of people won't tell you what's going on in their personal life, and they'll try and maintain this professionalism. And also with that, try and understand their aspirations and goals. They may want to buy a house, that you might be able to find a way of helping them to identify a good mortgage, or take off the worries that they might be having day to day in their personal lives. This massively builds loyalty, but also shows that you're supporting their personal growth, and also shows you totally care as manager. Leaving you with one power lesson from today, I would use a quote from my favourite book, The Secret, and that is by Dr. Joe Dispenser. And he basically said, where energy goes, that's where energy will flow. So if you're thinking about negative stuff, that's where the energy will go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Rita, what can I say? That's the first time I've listened to that, guys, all the way through. I purposely wanted to make sure that, I wanted to hear it kind of firsthand, the same experience as everybody else. And that is just such an awesome story. Me and Rita have had conversations before, and I think you're awesome anyway.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, just so many takeaways, and a lot of stuff that EventWell talks about as well. And we go out on our travels and our journeys and stuff. It's absolutely, your beliefs can either empower you or disempower you, and that's so true. Your brain is just an organ in your head. Okay, it's a very important organ, but it's just an organ in your head. It is not your thoughts, it's not your beliefs, it's your values. That they make up your personality. You can change your beliefs and values, and you can change. Your brain has a certain element of plasticity to it. So those that kind of think, well, this is the way I'm wired. No, you can change it, and you can take different directions, and it's very easy to be able to do that. And that the voices that Rita was saying, you can change those voices by changing your beliefs and your values, and changing your mindset and the way. And I think Rita just covered that story just so perfectly. And the culture in the organisation, Rita, I think is just outstanding, and is a shining beacon to anybody who thinks about the complication of how do I address the culture within my business to make it a more safe, rewarding, empowering, creative environment for my talent, and so that I keep my talents, as all business owners and employers want to do. So it's such a really powerful story. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Rita? Let's see if anybody's put any questions in. Nobody's put any questions in at the moment. So have a think if you've got some questions. We've got about another 5 minutes or so before this session. I was gonna ask you a question, because I really liked what you said about the mind and the brain, and it only kind of taking kind of direct instructions. We talk about this a lot. The brain can only take a direct instruction, and it has to be clear, concise instruction. It also can't process negatives. So if you want a pure example of how this works, and Rita can back this up as well. I'm scared of heights. So anybody who's ever done this, anybody who's scared of heights, what is normally the first thing you say to yourself when you get up somewhere high? Don't look down. You'll say this out. And the first thing your head does is that. Because your brain can only take a direct instruction. Your brain also can't process a negative. So it will take the look down. It will try and bobble what it is that you've tried to say, and take that instruction And I also liked what Rita was saying about, you know, that be careful about the words that you choose. I'm the same as Rita, so it's worked wonderfully for you, hasn't it, Rita? The fact that try not to use stress so much. We ban the word about like it's toffee without
Absolutely.
about it. Yeah, I'm stressed. Are you? Again, bear that in mind with the brain. Because as soon as you say I'm stressed, the brain only takes a direct instruction. So the first thing it's going to do is going to kick off your stress response, and your body's going to fire off cortisol and adrenaline because it thinks you're in. Your brain has taken an instruction that you're in a stressful, you're being challenged, you're in danger, there's a dinosaur coming for you. All of that kind of stuff is going to happen in the body. So I don't, Rita, did you want to talk just a little bit more about?
Well, it's exactly like that. So, you know, it's funny because you can switch on. Even now, I remember sort of 2-3 days ago, my team basically, I was committed to doing this presentation and being here, and my team decided that they were going to launch their new product in our garden, which is happening now. I can actually see people, about 20-30 people outside, but they were going to do it all at the same time. So automatically I'm like, I haven't done this for a long time. Am I going to be able to do this? And actually I spent a whole day feeling really heavy. And it wasn't until I stopped myself going, what am I saying to myself? And you know, absolutely forgiving when I've done it once or twice. So by the evening, both me and my husband were saying, wow, what did you do to each other today? It was awful. We're not going to do this again. And actually, funny enough, everything's running smoothly. There's no issues. I can't see anything. But it's amazing how quickly that trigger can make you feel bad so quickly. And I can say in the events industry, I see people all the time who just, their reactions and the way they speak to each other and also other people in the room. And these people are there to make an impression on your organization. So when you're whether it's someone in the AV team who's talking out of turn, they represent your organization. I have a team of people who will just go, yeah, not a problem. Let me just look at that. And they generally find a way of coping. But also at the same time, the less you listen to that negative, the more you start to listen to this inner voice, which is far more intuitive than this little devil on your shoulder talking. So you will find generally that once you start listening to that, you will know when to press the buttons at your event and also make decisions. So I have literally, it's almost, you know, I call it the witch syndrome. I automatically know that something's going to go wrong here. I'm going to load this in the lorry today just in case. And it's really funny. Everyone's saying to me, that's really bizarre. Why did you put that in? And I'm like, I just don't know why, but I've just put it in. Lo and behold, that thing happens. And it's because I'm listening to the right voices telling me that you just need to be aware today. You need to be alert today, rather than someone saying, I'm stressed.
Yeah. It's a way of, isn't it, of quieting the mind so you can really focus and be productive, because it's just touching on what you said there. Gut instinct, guys, we need to be aware of this. They do actually say that the body has 3 brains. So you have the brain in your head, you have the brain of your heart, and you have the brain of your gut. That's because there's actually neurons in your heart and your gut as well as your brain. So that's why when people say, listen to your heart, listen to your gut, that's where those things have come from. So if your gut's telling you that maybe I should pat that just in case that kind of happens, or maybe your heart's sending you a message that maybe you need to say no to something and concentrate on yourself a little bit. It's learning to be in tune with your body and practicing things such as mindfulness and ways of calming the mind and reprogramming how we think and how we talk is a way we be able to be more in tune with your body and the things it will send to you. And that's such an important message, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's completely correlated. It's not just about mindfulness, it's correlated to business success. And it's not a kind of, I constantly think it's a core skill that everyone should have, because just as much as you need to learn how to count and talk properly, communicate properly, being mindful should be a core skill that you have, so you're able to, especially in events, so you're able to cope and you look as if you're coping. Because actually the next time round, when you don't look as if you're coping, your client's not going to book you. And so it boils down to something as basic as that.
Yeah. It's when this actually, from what you've just said, it's absolutely 100%. And this is the stuff we talk about, isn't it? It impacts on your bottom line, guys. So business owners, this is win-win. This isn't nice fluffy stuff, nice to do at the weekend or on a Friday after you've all finished a week and you go and do a nice cocktail mixing class, or you did your gym membership and stuff like that as well. And the stuff that Rita was talking about is about complete culture changes within organisation, and how you look at the culture and the way you do things as an organisation, and the way that you look after your team and your people, because that will reflect in your business's brand. Because you're the biggest brand that your business has, Rita, would you agree, is the people, is your people.
Absolutely.
That's your biggest brand. Yeah.
There are so many, especially in events, there's so many venue search companies, there's so many event production companies, lighting companies, there's a lot of us around. But your approach to customers, to events, it is totally defines you, and whether you get that next job or not.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Claire's put a nice question in here. So it sounds like you have good balance of work, home, rest and play now.
Yes, yeah, and COVID's made sure it's even more balanced. But yeah. I have to say, very strange though, I have never been so, and I hate to use the word busy, but I have never had so many things going on all at the same time during COVID. And I've done more because I've spent probably 3-4 hours a day sometimes focusing on my mindfulness. But then on the flip side, I've actually achieved more. So funny enough, launching new companies, getting the website done, I am ready to go back to work in a way that I've never been, because I've had the time to really focus on my brain and tell my brain that this is what I want to achieve.
Yeah. And Claire's gone on to say, how have you learned to say no to work or projects that you know will harm your new beliefs and culture? That's a really good question, Claire.
Yeah. Funny enough, it's a lot of gut feel, and it's really strange, and I can't even describe it, because I get this like really weird pit of my stomach kind of feeling that I just think, oh, I don't want to do that. And weirdly enough, even though sometimes I push myself going, no, don't be so stupid, it'll be fine, halfway through or something will happen for me to actually, whether the event's not either I don't win the pitch, or I don't get something, and we don't, or halfway through that the event might be cancelled. And it's a really strange thing, because I get to that day and I don't think there's once in my entire lifetime of now being, now understanding my inner wisdom, that I've not said, oh my word, if we had got that event, we wouldn't have been able to cope. So really, it's so true to kind of listen to yourself. So it's not even me that's saying no. Sometimes I say yes, but like weirdly, somehow the universe just organizes it so that I don't have it and I don't have that stress. Very strange, but it happens to me all the time.
Yeah. And that sometimes is the part of it, isn't it? It's just, you just know. Yes. You can't explain to anybody else how you know. It's just know. It's, yeah.
Absolutely.
You just know, and that comes from, doesn't it, that being in tune with yourself and your body and your thoughts and your feelings, and really kind of having that feeling of balance.
Absolutely. You're calm enough to kind of go, oh, something's telling me something. There are signs telling you things that you shouldn't be doing so many times, in everything. And therefore, if you just watch out for them, instead of watching out for something that is completely meaningless, if you're watching out for the things that you should be doing, you will get telltale signs along the way. Right, I need to do this path. I have no idea some of the businesses I've got myself into and events I've got myself into, because it kind of signposted me there and I found myself there, and it's all been lovely. But equally, I've had moments where I feel really sad, thinking, oh, I wish I'd got that. But actually, on that particular day, I wouldn't have been able to. Christmas is a great example. And all of our team would say, Rita, if we'd taken that, wow, that would have been really difficult. So, yes, absolutely. Follow your gut. That's what all this helps you to do.
Yeah, follow your gut. Seriously, you can't say it often enough. Remember those neurons. You've got neurons in the gut, and they're there for a reason. That's also the reason why mental health, so anybody that's suffering with mental health illnesses tend to have problems with their guts, so they'll tend to have. But that's, read about that stuff. It's fascinating stuff. I wanted to finish off our session, Rita. The trees, the amazing trees, the Eventologist trees. We've all seen the sparkly trees. I love them. I think they're amazing. But tell us the story of the Chancellor.
So anyway, very bizarre. Just before lockdown, we did the installation for the Hanami Festival for a lot of the Wagamama stores. And literally the last one was on the 19th, and we got locked down on the 23rd. So they didn't even have the opportunity to kind of expose and put a marketing program together. And we knew in the background that they hadn't had any use of it. So, of course, we said to them, leave it in there. And it was beautiful, like that beautiful blossom canopies. And it was delightful to walk in, but also even more delightful to eat your ramen under this, under this bed of blossom. So, funny enough, I kind of worked, I think it was about 11 o'clock that night. It was a late one. And my husband went, oh my word, it's Wagamamas and it's our trees. And then I didn't really register that it was Rishi Sunak who was in front of it. And I saw him and I went, oh my word. So the next thing I know, I've seen us on like all our work in the background and Rishi Sunak in front of it. Obviously, it was a really good media shot that was there on the Times. And I couldn't resist the opportunity to tell everyone that, look, or tell Rishi off and say, well, look, we are the reason that you are in the headlines. That shot is such a good shot and it's probably traveled worldwide. But when's it time for you to make us headlines? Because every day I kind of think, well, they're going to talk about the events industry today and they still don't. So I am still waiting for Rishi to come back to me and tell me what he's going to have planned for the events industry.
Brilliant. It's just, it was amazing. I loved the post when I saw it on LinkedIn and you shared it. And I check it out and have a look at the shot, because Rita's right, it's just stunning. It's a stunning shot. You can see why they've chosen that with that kind of background. It was just a stunning shot, but a really, really powerful post when you shared it on LinkedIn in terms of getting us started. So I thought
let's hope we hear from Rishi soon.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. We just need a start date. Hey guys, that's what we need. So at least we can start doing what we do and start planning stuff again, and maybe get our amazing industry kick-started again. Rita, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story. Incredibly powerful. If anybody does want to ask Rita any questions like after the event, are we okay to share your contact details if people want to?
Absolutely. Share, they can DM me, they can obviously call me. It's not a problem.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rita. Thanks to everyone for attending. We'll see you later. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.